The Oxford Dictionary defines reality as the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them, a thing that exists in fact, having previously only existed in one's mind, or an existence that is absolute, self-sufficient, or objective, and not subject to human decisions or conventions. Welcome to the unReality podcast. Okay, so over the next two episodes, we're going to delve a bit deeper into why we subscribe to our chosen life philosophies. And today, Marcos is going to explain a bit about why he is a nihilist and what nihilism means to him. Just a caveat, we are not philosophers or experts by any means, just want to make that clear. The goal here is to talk about our personal experiences and applications of these philosophies to our lives. So let's get started. Marcos, according to you, what is nihilism?
I think the best way to start answering that is to go to the minimum expression of nihilism. Okay, basically, nihilism comes from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing, and ism. And the whole thing is, the meaning is nothingness. And I think that already gives you so much about what nihilism is about.
It's about nothing.
Yeah, it's like everything is nothing, but basically there's no everything, so nothing is nothing. So is the nothing of nothingness, right? And the other thing here is, I want to make a tiny disclaimer. This is the beginning, and you just read it. You did it at the beginning, and I just wanted to say it again. I am not an expert in nihilism. I would say, first,
you're a nihilism baby.
Oh, I don't know what nihilism is. Like, I have no idea what nihilism is. I one day discovered that some of the stuff that I liked or believed in were more or less nihilist. So when I have to define myself, I say, hey, I would say I'm a nihilist. I would say probably not I'm a nihilist, maybe an existentialist, maybe a topic we might go further. And but the whole point here is, this is my experience with nihilism. This is not what nihilism is. I haven't studied nihilism. I haven't read books about nihilism. I read articles of nihilism. I did a bit of research, and I watched some stuff of nihilism, and I lived, for these years, kind of like
more or less
following,
with a nihilist.
Yeah, following a kind of like a path, right? And that's basically where we're gonna end the disclaimer here, but it's basically wanted to make sure that people know that I have no idea, because usually there's a lot of people who knows a lot than me in a lot of topics. This is one of them. So, just saying. But going back to, definition of nihilism, I think because we're saying is nothingness, I think that's the best of it. The fact that if nothing is nothing means nothing exists. And if you base everything on the non-existence of things, it means nothing has limits. Existence has limits. Things that exist have limits. The universe, right?
I mean, we're in bodies, and our bodies have limits. So I agree with you.
Well, we can get into a whole theory that the being is a social construct. But I think we can.
Let's maybe not get too deep right off the bat.
Okay, that sounds okay. But
so let's backtrack a bit.
Okay, so in this, the existence has limits. The universe, as something that people believe in, existence. People believe in a thing called the observable universe, right? And their own universe has limits. people talk about the limits of the universe, the edge of the universe, you know? But from an nihilist perspective, nothing has limits.
Okay, so what does this mean for you? What is nihilism for you?
Well, I would start saying because I base my knowledge of nihilism from what I hear and watch from others as well, right? So in this case, you know how much I like Under the Influence by Terry Riley, the podcast, the CBC podcast.
Yeah, he
talks
a lot of cool things about advertising and marketing, and
exactly.
You're a marketing guy.
I recommend Under the Influence to anyone. I would say if you breathe, you should. If you breathe and you can understand English, you should hear that podcast because it's so interesting. Like even the other day we were listening, was it Real Estate?
Yeah, he's just a good storyteller. I think that's what draws you in.
And he has that voice.
Oh, he's got a good radio voice.
Well, he did radio ads for
yeah,
for
that's
a living.
True. It's true.
I mean, he wrote radio ads for a living. He was not a but yeah. So in that sense, so I was listening to one of the episodes. I think it was Bookmarks, 2019, and he was talking about the different books that he liked this year and whatever, and he talked about a book I think was Dave Trott's book. I think was the I don't remember now. But the point was there was a story about an ad person that bought a farm with sheep, and I don't want to go through the whole story because it gets very long. But basically, the moral was you don't know what you don't know, and it basically said that while in business or in life, a lot of people finds the giving a fast answer, it's a good thing. It's actually a terrible thing. Because the moment you give an answer, the moment you say, yes, I know the answer, even when you don't know it, you're closing all the other opportunities. So in the sense of like every time you say, I don't know this, you can learn more about it. Right? The story ended up with a bunch of sheep they're starved to death. If the guy, accepted that he didn't know about sheep, nothing would have happened.
This is true.
So in the same way, nihilism is about what you don't know. And I think accepting the probability that you don't know everything, or that you know nothing, and then nothing exists, and then nothing has meaning from within, you can then, start building from there. That's what existentialists say. That, pure nihilists would say nothing has meaning and, kill yourself. When existentialists would say nothing has meaning, but you can still build your own meaning. And,
Okay, so do you think you relate more to nihilism or existentialism, or do we even need to talk about defining your worldview based on some of these concepts?
Well, considering that these concepts themselves are social constructs, basically the concept of nihilism is made up. Everything is made up, right? We talked about that with a bunch of stuff, and
we talked about that meme, that Fox News meme.
Yeah, the Fox News meme about
the metric system and how it's all made up, and then we started thinking about how the imperial system is made up, and that
languages are made up,
and everything in this world is probably made up.
100%. Everything is made up. And again, according to nihilism, nothing exists.
Yeah.
So what you're measuring doesn't actually exist, right? So, but considering that probably we don't only draw these lines of what's nihilism or what's existentialism, just because we like to tag things and
We like to put things in categories, and
buckets.
I mean, that's true.
But I mean, when we're doing this, okay, because I don't know enough about this to actually create the right buckets. I'm gonna quote someone who seemed to have a better idea of the differences. So
Okay.
I read this article from Daniel Miessler, and he's a IT security telecommunications person who has like a personal blog and writes about a bunch of stuff, including philosophy. And he talks about the differences between existentialism, nihilism, and he introduces absurdism. That seems to be his cup of tea. More like I think it's Albert Camus' version of
Camus,
absurdism.
yeah.
Camus, thank you. So that's where he goes. He leans towards, and he's very supportive of. He really supports those ideas. But basically, he gives three definitions there. He talks about existentialism as the belief that through a combination of awareness, free will, and personal responsibility, one can construct their own meaning within a world that intrinsically has none of its own. So, kind of what we were saying before, existentialism is things don't have meaning, but you can create the one you want. Good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's good, you're making it's nihilism, but in a positive way. Then he talks about nihilism in a more pure way, saying that nihilism is the belief that not only there is non-intrinsic meaning in the universe, but it is pointless to try to construct our own as a substitute. So basically, again,
and in that case, you're really asking what's the point, and then
kill yourself.
That could just it leads to self-sabotage.
Well, that's kind of like is that the part of it? How could I say? What do you when I start telling you about nihilism? You already knew about nihilism. It wasn't new to you. What was your perspective from nihilism?
My perspective on nihilism? Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of these concepts kind of cross over with a lot of my worldview. But it just seemed to me that I only really viewed it from this pure nihilistic standpoint where there just didn't seem to be any hope in it. And so I think that was just my assumption about it. Oh, it's this idea that nothing has meaning, and so therefore nothing matters, and we should just not try or bother, or it just seemed hopeless to me. That was my view of it.
Well, that's the thing, but that's one of the reasons why I.
So it's good we're having this conversation because I think it's
exactly. But this happens
opening my mind a bit more.
When I tell friends, and that I've been reading about self-nihilism, stuff like that. Obviously, the first reaction is never great. Like, oh, that sounds fucked up, or like something like that.
That sounds dark.
But then, again, we're talking. This is pure nihilism that people, they don't know the other sides, and that's why, like, we already said, what existentialism and nihilism, those definitions that this person did, and I find this third one, it's you're gonna find this even more positive meaning in there, in some way. He says that he talks about absurdism, and I think it's absurdism. It's not only sort of positive; it's actually more common. Like there's a lot more people that goes in that direction. I think even your dad goes in that direction, in some way, in the sense that absurdism is the belief that a search for meaning is inherently in conflict with the actual lack of meaning, but that one should both accept this and simultaneously rebel against it by embracing what life has to offer.
So it's a more balanced.
It's like
approach to nihilism where
I would say I know there's nothing, but I don't care, and I'm still gonna live my life.
There's nothing, or you think there's nothing?
I think I don't want to get into like this right now, but I think it's the difference between being agnostic and an atheist. An atheist, I would say, is more like the nihilist guy who tells you there's no God.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the guy who supports more absurdism is, I don't know if there is or there isn't, or, because if thinking about there is or there isn't is against the fact that there isn't, so
you're open to it.
Let's just live life and whatever happens.
Okay. So this is all very enlightening, but what I want to know is, how does this apply to the path that you're walking in life?
Well, that's interesting, because I find that with nihilism, there's like a parallelism in my life between nihilism and ADHD, right? The fact that I got diagnosed at 30, right, make me look back at my life and be like, oh,
it all makes sense.
Even with you, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff you were like, oh, that's what that was coming from, and I think with like nihilism is something similar. Like, starting reading more about nihilism and seeing, oh, like
it just resonates with you
100%. And I remember in the first episode, I was saying how I was reading this article and it was like supposed to be a deep rabbit hole, and I was like, nah, I'm good here. It's a good hole to be in. I keep falling, sure, not worried about it. So in that sense, right? It's so basically, the way nihilism applies to my life, it's not, like, as I said, it's not pure nihilism. It's my experience in my life that then I define as some sort of nihilism, plus in the last months, I would say, additions from things that we have talked about as well.
You've adopted some of my worldviews.
Exactly.
And integrated it into your nihilistic
point
of view. Yes.
So in that sense, we're going to talk about your experience in the next episode.
Yes.
And what spiritualism means to you, and more things. But if you allow me, I would like to take some of those concepts and show it to what, for me, what all of this applies to nihilism as well. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Sure.
So basically, there's one part that it's not necessarily yours. It's more like just my stuff. That is being a skeptic. Like, I think nihilism drives you to that. Nothing exists, so I question everything. There's limits. Like, you don't question everything, because if not, you would be, let's say, an arrogant asshole. And I don't want to get into that. I don't want to go in that direction. Like, I like to have doubts about things, not negate. I don't want to say no to everything. Nothing,
Or try and defend your position till someone backs down.
Exactly.
Situation.
So it's basically, oh, this is this way. And I'm like, well, maybe. That way, I'm not saying no. And the other person still keeps to, so no one won. But
Nobody
no one lost.
Wins. Nobody wins.
But no one loses. So the thing. So, skepticism keeps me on my toes. And I think that's a positive thing. Then existentialism, and that's kind of like, again, now I'm going to more your territory, because I'm trying to give a better meaning to my life in the last months, and that comes with existentialism. I'm trying to keep my ego in check, right? It's like, we're having this conversation the other day in the car when the conversation was basically, I think you have to keep some ego, a minimum ego. It's good. Yeah. And you were saying,
well, my position is that we need to undo the ego entirely. I mean, that's not an instant process, but it's like I think that's the goal for me anyway. That's what I think the goal should be.
Well, we can expand more in your
we will expand in my episode. Yes.
So
keeping some ego.
Exactly. And then there's a part of, like, from pure nihilism, I'd like to take the part of like the unity of things in existence, in the sense like we are all
interconnected in a ecosystem.
Yes, like we're all connected in the sense that no one exists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we can. I don't want to again. We're trying to keep these episodes as like more introduction to the concepts, right? So I don't want to get too deep into it, but the fact that if you consider this reality as something that doesn't exist, and that's it.
So it's an unreality.
Exactly. If you just consider that, then you like why being good,
mm-hmm.
right? But then if you take it from the side of in this reality, we are all one thing. We are all the same carbon made entities. And even the concept of entity, the concept of being,
mm-hmm.
it's made up. Because this is very funny because we always talked about this. When you touch someone,
you're not really touching them. Yeah.
And when you eat pineapple,
pineapple is eating you.
Right? So that's kind of the thing, in the sense of like, when you're touching something, you're not really touching it. But at the same time, between you not touching that thing, between those two things, there is still matter, something, right? So, but again,
this is a principle of physics, and maybe we can find some information about that concept and put it in the footnotes of this episode.
100%. There's gonna be, I think, a lot of stuff.
We're gonna be making a lot of references, and not necessarily able to fully explain them all at the moment.
I basically have a bunch of links that I've done, like my research for this episode, that I'm gonna just put some of the links on the description for sure. Okay. So the thing is, we're talking about the unity, right? And then the last part that resonates with you as well is, for me, it hangs from moral nihilism. Considering that, if all the laws and rules of societies are all made up, right? Why can't you forgive anyone? In the sense that doesn't mean society are not going to punish these people, because there's laws, there's courts, and in this reality or unreality, you're going to get punished. But there's theories that say that free will doesn't exist. What you have, it's a practical free will. You have the perception that you have choices.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like I say, people who do bad things didn't always have a choice. And in the end, is the rules that we use to tag these people as good or bad are made up.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, why can't you forgive more people? And I'm taking this to like a very like far extreme of like people could commit crimes. But in your daily life, like someone cuts you off in traffic, can you forgive the person? You don't know the full story.
No.
And someone who has, you just see me driving for like 7 years now. My road range used to be crazy, and
it's calmed down a lot. But the truth is when you let it go, you feel a lot better than you do if you kind of sink into that rage episode while you're, driving around.
Well, that's the thing. I find that while a lot of the things work towards making your life better, it does work into making other people's lives better as well.
So let's move along. So I know you talked a bit about the different aspects of nihilism, but if someone wants to start dipping their toes into this ideology, where do you think they should start?
Well, that's a good question, because it's kind of like the process where I am in right now. Like one of the, I would say, a lot of people like to throw shit at Wikipedia just because it's like an open and free thing. But I found really, really, really good information, and information references from there, like on the notes on the bottom of the page. And again, I could have quoted a lot from Wikipedia about what nihilism is, and do a whole episode about what Wikipedia is. But I didn't want to make an audiobook of Wikipedia, right? And so basically, yeah, I would recommend people to do their own research, maybe starting with Wikipedia, just it's there, like search nihilism on Google, you're going to see, that's how I found like really good articles from like the one I mentioned before, or there's an article from Owen Lloyd that says how nihilism made me a better person. And it's a really good article. And again, giving a positive note to nihilism. And so yeah, I mean, what we always say, Wisecrack is really good. The YouTube channel.
I'm always a big fan of using, television and other media to, help you sort of reflect on your ideas or worldviews. And so I recommend, and it's an easy place to start. You don't have to get too intellectual and dig deep into the major philosophers and their writings.
I mean, that's the best thing about the Wisecrack channel. Like I would one day love to have a conversation with someone with that from that channel, because they seem pretty awesome. Like Jared from Wisecrack is the way he doesn't take himself seriously. I find like the way he's like
accessible.
Yeah, he talks about very deep concepts written by very deep like philosophers and writers, and the way, I mean, the whole channel is about analyzing pop culture and the philosophy in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like what we said, anything Rick and Morty is pretty interesting when it comes, like even the show itself we're recommending last episode. But when it comes to like the episode of Wisecrack about Rick and Morty, or the episode of Wisecrack when they were comparing BoJack and Rick Sanchez, and then the one with True Detective talking about pessimism, right? And we put these links in the description if people want to check them out. And in the last episode, I already said how everything has started for me. Like my discovery of nihilism has started because of Wisecrack one day watching this BoJack and Rick Sanchez video.
And it was more like you came to a realization after watching it. You were like, oh.
Well, not only that, I came to a realization that nihilism had different sides. And here they were talking about existential and cosmic, right?
So I guess we can start wrapping this up. Any final thoughts you want to share?
Well, once we're this is probably not the last episode we're going to talk about nihilism. I think it's basically an introduction to nihilism, and maybe in the future we do like a part 2 when things get deeper. But I would say that it's important to look at nihilism not only from the that pessimistic point of view, or basically we always say things like nihilism is this thing that only leads to a sad life, of like fueled with alcohol and depression, and darkness and anger towards the world. And
I always say there's another way to look at the world.
Oh, there's infinite perceptions.
Exactly.
But that's the thing. I tried to bring nihilism to the bright side, and basically we're talking about absurdism before, and I think that absurdism does something right in the sense of you can accept or tolerate or follow some of the social constructs around you. Could be or feelings that you might consider they exist or not, considering that they're just chemistry in your brain, and you have to believe that chemistry actually exists, and that the brain exists as a thing. But even if you don't believe in that, Things like forgiveness, kindness, or even paying your taxes make your life better.
I agree.
And more, it makes other people better, other people's lives better. And I would just wanted to say one last thing, and uh, that is a good thing about, I find, existentialism or even absurdism. I would say goes most with existentialism is and this is a quote from Afterlife, the show with Ricky Gervais on Netflix. Uh, in this case, they talk about happiness, and they say that happiness is amazing. It's so amazing that it doesn't matter if it's yours or not. And I find that it just links so well with my version of existentialism, in the sense of, it doesn't matter that you don't believe in concepts like, I don't say believe, it's, that happiness, love, and friendship are just social constructs. It's all made up. They're perceptions.
I don't know.
Well, what is their true is, in this body, or whatever you want to call it, they still make you feel better. And they make others feel better. Being a good friend is good for you, makes you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more, makes your friends feel better.
With the ripple effect.
100%. So in this case, you can do all this stuff without giving away anything you believe in. Or in this case, anything you don't believe in. So, again, we talked about existentialism, absurdism, stuff like that. I don't really know what my answer is. I don't know where I draw my lines. What is true is, from an analyst perspective, none of this actually exists.
It doesn't. Well, do we exist?
I mean,
we seemingly exist for the purposes of this podcast. For now.
Yep.
I guess we'll leave it at that.
Till the next episode.
Ta-ta for now.